What if I told you that for most of human history, people didn't wait until they were sick to start protecting themselves? They ate specific plants every single day. Plants that kept their immune systems prepared, alert, and ready. Not as a treatment, as a shield. Most people don't know this, but while we're all waiting until the first sign of a fever to reach for something, ancient civilizations in China, Egypt, the Americas, and across Europe had already identified specific plants that prime the immune system before any threat arrives. Plants with actual clinical evidence backing them up. Plants that modern immunology has now confirmed were doing exactly what ancient physicians said they did. And today I'm going to show you 20 of them that will completely change the way you think about protecting your body. Stick around, because number 17 on this list was used by Native American healers for over 400 years specifically to prevent illness during harsh winters. And a meta-analysis of 58 separate clinical trials just confirmed it reduces the incidence of common infections by 35%. And number 20 has been the most prescribed plant in one of the world's most advanced healthcare systems for the past 3 decades. Not as alternative medicine, as standard medical practice. And most people in the English-speaking world have never heard of it. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, because we post new videos every week connecting the healing wisdom our ancestors lived by with the science that is finally proving why it worked. Now let's get into it. Here are 20 ancient immune plants that protect you before you get sick, ranked from impressive to absolutely extraordinary. Let's start with a plant that has been at the center of traditional medicine in more cultures and more continents than almost any other plant on Earth. Elderberry, Sambucus nigra, the deep purple-black berries from the elderflower bush. And here's what most people miss about elderberry. Most people reach for it when they're already sick. But the ancient use was completely different. Hippocrates, the father of medicine himself, called the elder tree his medicine chest. Medieval European herbalists used it as a daily tonic specifically to maintain immune readiness throughout the winter months. The modern science has caught up to that approach in a striking way. Multiple double-blind clinical trials show elderberry extract doesn't just reduce the duration of illness. It reduces susceptibility to infection in the first place. The berries contain anthocyanins and flavonoids that directly activate macrophage activity, stimulate natural killer cell production, and increase cytokine signaling that puts the immune system on alert status before any pathogen arrives. The traditional preparation was simple. Elderberry syrup made by simmering the cooked berries with raw honey and cinnamon, taken daily through the winter months, not at the first sign of illness. Elderberry got overlooked as a preventive because pharmaceutical companies can't profit from daily food. They can only profit from treatment. But the original use was never about treatment. It was about staying ahead of illness entirely. Think of it as the ancient medicine chest that Hippocrates kept fully stocked, for good reason. Astragalus has been the most important immune plant in traditional Chinese medicine for over 2,000 years. And here's the context that changes everything about how you understand it. In ancient China, Astragalus wasn't given to sick people. It was given to healthy people. It was classified as a tonic herb, meaning its primary purpose was building and maintaining robust function in a healthy body, not treating a sick one. Modern immunology has validated that approach completely. Astragalus root contains polysaccharides and saponins that have been shown in multiple peer-reviewed studies to increase T-cell proliferation, enhance natural killer cell activity, and upregulate interferon production. These are the exact mechanisms that determine how quickly your immune system identifies and neutralizes a threat. Clinical research shows Astragalus supplementation significantly increases immune cell counts in healthy adults. It doesn't just react, it builds. Traditional preparation was the dried roots simmered in broths and soups throughout the winter. Slices of Astragalus root added to chicken broth was the standard daily immune preparation across generations in China and Korea. Astragalus got forgotten in Western medicine because it doesn't treat a named condition. And Western medicine is organized around treating named conditions. But the ancient understanding was more sophisticated than that. You don't wait for the fire to call the fire department. You build fire-resistant walls. Think of it as the plant that 2,000 years of Chinese physicians prescribed to the people who were already well. Andrographis is relatively unknown in the West, but in Scandinavia, India, and Southeast Asia, it has been one of the most important immune plants in traditional medicine for centuries. In Sweden, it is literally sold over the counter in pharmacies as a standard treatment for respiratory tract infections, not as a supplement, as medicine. Here's what makes Andrographis extraordinary. It contains a compound called Andrographis that has been shown in multiple clinical trials to significantly reduce the severity and duration of respiratory infections. But its most important function is upstream of infection. Andrographis activates NF-κB pathways and increases interferon production in ways that specifically prepare the immune system's first-line defenses. A randomized controlled trial showed that people taking Andrographis during respiratory season had significantly lower rates of infection than those taking placebo. Not just shorter illness, fewer illnesses. Traditional use across India was Andrographis tea, extremely bitter, because the bitterness itself is part of the active chemistry, or Andrographis combined with honey to make the taste tolerable. Andrographis got forgotten in the English-speaking world simply because it grows primarily in Asia, and its clinical research was published largely in Scandinavian and Asian journals that Western consumers never encountered. But the evidence is there, solid, reproducible, and largely ignored. Think of it as the plant that Scandinavian pharmacies have been selling for decades, while the rest of us were still reaching for products that didn't work half as well. Reishi mushroom has been called the mushroom of immortality in Chinese medicine for over 2,000 years. And while that name sounds like ancient poetic exaggeration, the modern immunology behind it is genuinely extraordinary. Reishi contains beta-glucans and triterpenoids that operate as immune modulators, not immune stimulants. Modulators. That distinction matters enormously. Stimulating an immune system that is already overreacting causes inflammation and autoimmune responses. Modulating it means Reishi brings an underactive immune system up and an overactive immune system down simultaneously. Clinical studies show Reishi supplementation increases natural killer cell activity, improves T lymphocyte function, and reduces inflammatory cytokines that cause the secondary damage during infections. Multiple peer-reviewed trials confirm improvements in immune cell counts and activity in both healthy individuals and those with compromised immune systems. Traditional preparation was Reishi tea made from the dried woody mushroom, simmered for hours to extract the active compounds. The taste is intensely bitter. Ancient Chinese physicians considered that bitterness to be evidence of potency. Reishi got dismissed in Western medicine because its benefits are systemic and preventive rather than targeted at a specific named condition. Our medical system is designed to treat illness. It has very little framework for strengthening health that already exists. Think of it as the mushroom that 2,000 years of physicians prescribed to the emperor, precisely because losing the emperor to a preventable illness was not an option. Tulsi, holy basil, is so revered in India that it is called the queen of herbs. Every traditional Hindu household has a Tulsi plant growing near the entrance, not as decoration, as daily medicine. And the specific reason it was placed there was to purify the air and protect the health of everyone who lived inside. Modern research has identified exactly why this practice worked. Tulsi contains eugenol, rosmarinic acid, and ursolic acid that function as immunomodulators. Clinical studies show Tulsi reduces cortisol levels, and here is why that matters for immune function specifically. Chronically elevated cortisol directly suppresses the production of natural killer cells and T lymphocytes. Every day you spend under chronic stress, your immune cell counts drop. Tulsi breaks that cycle. Research also shows Tulsi has direct antiviral and antibacterial properties, increases antibody responses to vaccines, and improves the body's ability to mount an immune response to novel pathogens. Traditional preparation was fresh Tulsi leaves chewed each morning on an empty stomach or steeped in hot water as a daily tea. The leaves were picked fresh from the plant at the doorway every day. Tulsi got forgotten in Western health cultures simply because it doesn't grow in temperate climates and arrive in the West only as a supplement rather than as a living daily plant. But the practice of consuming it fresh every single morning is what made it work as preventive medicine. Think of it as the plant that an entire civilization built into the architecture of their daily lives, because they understood that immune protection is a daily practice, not an emergency response. Cat's claw is a woody vine from the Amazon rainforest, and it was one of the most important medicines of the indigenous peoples of Peru and Bolivia for centuries. They called it una de gato and used it specifically for immune support, inflammation, and what they described as purifying the blood. Modern immunology has confirmed that last description was surprisingly accurate. Cat's claw contains oxindole alkaloids that have been shown to stimulate white blood cell production, enhance phagocytosis, the process by which immune cells engulf and destroy pathogens, and reduce inflammatory cytokines. A clinical study showed cat's claw supplementation significantly increased natural killer cell activity within 4 weeks in healthy adults. The plant also contains quinovic acid glycosides that have documented antiviral activity, and pentacyclic alkaloids that directly stimulate the production and differentiation of immune cells from bone marrow. Traditional preparation was cat's claw bark tea, simmered for an extended period to release the alkaloids. The taste is bitter and earthy. Cat's claw got overlooked in Western medicine because Amazonian plant medicine was systematically dismissed as indigenous folk practice rather than investigated as pharmacological evidence. But the compounds in cat's claw are now among the most studied plant-based immune alkaloids in modern research. Think of it as the vine that the Amazon's most ancient healers reached for first, and that modern immunology is finally catching up to. Shiitake mushroom is so familiar as a food that we've completely forgotten it was first cultivated in China and Japan specifically as medicine. Ancient Chinese physicians prescribed it for centuries for what they called supporting the vital defense energy of the body. And here's what makes Shiitake genuinely extraordinary as an immune plant. Shiitake contains a specific compound called lentinin, a beta-glucan polysaccharide that is so potent as an immune modulator that it is used as an approved adjunct cancer therapy in Japan, not as a supplement, as a pharmaceutical preparation prescribed alongside conventional treatment. Clinical research shows lentinin from Shiitake dramatically increases macrophage activity, enhances natural killer cell function, and stimulates the production of interleukin-1 and tumor necrosis factor, two of the primary immune signaling molecules that coordinate the body's response to cellular threats. But the traditional use was simple. Shiitake eaten regularly as food, several times a week throughout the year. The ancient preparation was shiitake simmered in broths, the same way the active compounds are released most effectively. Shiitake got reduced to a food ingredient in the Western world because nobody could patent a mushroom. But in Japan, the medicine was never lost. It was just reclassified as dinner. Think of it as the mushroom that Japan never stopped treating as medicine, while the rest of the world started putting it on pizza. If you're starting to see the pattern here, if you're realizing that the most powerful immune protection was never in a pill bottle, but in the plants and foods our ancestors ate every single day, do me a favor. Hit that like button right now. It helps this video reach the people who need it most. And if you haven't subscribed to Ancient Roots Healing yet, click that subscribe button and ring the bell. We're building something here that matters, and I'd love to have you as part of it. Oregano is so common in kitchens that its profound medicinal history has been almost completely forgotten. But ancient Greek physicians used oregano specifically for immune defense and respiratory protection. The name itself comes from the Greek words oris and ganos, meaning mountain and joy, because the Greeks associated oregano specifically with vital health and strength. Modern research has confirmed why. Oregano contains carvacrol and thymol, two of the most potent natural antimicrobial and antiviral compounds ever identified in a plant. Studies show oregano oil is effective against bacteria, viruses, and fungi, including antibiotic-resistant strains. But its immune function goes beyond direct antimicrobial activity. Carvacrol has been shown to activate thermoreceptors in the respiratory tract that directly stimulate local immune responses, essentially putting the immune system of the respiratory lining on alert. Traditional use was oregano tea drunk regularly throughout winter, or fresh oregano used generously in cooking. Mediterranean populations that consume oregano as a daily culinary herb consistently show lower rates of respiratory infection than those who don't. Oregano got forgotten as medicine because it became too familiar as food. Nobody thinks of their kitchen spices as immune protection. But the Greek physicians who named it Mountain Joy knew exactly what they were celebrating. Think of it as the herb that ancient physicians considered essential for vital health. And that's been sitting in your kitchen this entire time. Licorice root has been used in traditional medicine in virtually every major civilization simultaneously. Ancient Egypt, ancient China, ancient Greece, ancient India. Every one of them identified this root independently as a primary medicine for respiratory immunity and throat protection. That cross-cultural consensus, spanning thousands of years and multiple continents, is not coincidence. It is pharmacological evidence. Licorice root contains glycyrrhizin, a compound that has been shown in multiple clinical studies to have direct antiviral activity against respiratory viruses, to enhance interferon production in the respiratory tract lining, and to reduce the inflammatory response in mucous membranes that makes respiratory infections so damaging. It also contains chalcones and flavonoids that stimulate macrophage activity and increase the production of secretory IgA, the primary antibody that patrols the mucous membranes of the respiratory tract and is the first line of immune defense against airborne pathogens. Traditional preparation was licorice root tea, simmered to release the active compounds. The taste is naturally sweet and warming. It was the pleasant-tasting medicine in a tradition full of bitter ones. Licorice root got overlooked because glycyrrhizin in high doses can raise blood pressure. This legitimate caution became a blanket dismissal. But at traditional tea doses, it is one of the safest and most effective respiratory immune plants ever studied. Think of it as the sweet root that 4 of the world's greatest civilizations independently discovered, and that modern research confirms they were all right about. Black seed, Nigella sativa, has been used medicinally for over 3,000 years. It was found in the tomb of Tutankhamun. The Prophet Muhammad described it as a cure for everything except death, and modern pharmacology has been studying it intensively for the past 30 years. The primary active compound is thymoquinone, and its immune effects are some of the most comprehensively documented of any plant compound in current research. Clinical studies show thymoquinone increases natural killer cell activity, enhances T lymphocyte proliferation, improves antibody production, and reduces inflammatory cytokines that cause tissue damage during infections. A randomized controlled trial showed black seed supplementation significantly improved immune cell counts and function in healthy adults over a 12-week period. But here's what makes black seed uniquely valuable as a preventive immune plant. Thymoquinone has been shown to specifically protect the respiratory epithelium, the cellular lining of the lungs and airways, from oxidative damage. This is the exact tissue that becomes vulnerable during respiratory infections. Traditional preparation was black seed oil taken daily by the teaspoon, or the whole seeds ground and mixed with honey. Both forms contain the active compounds. Black seed got overlooked in Western medicine despite an overwhelming body of evidence simply because it comes from the Islamic medical tradition, which has been systematically undervalued in Western pharmacological research. Think of it as the seed that was buried with a pharaoh and described as miraculous by a prophet, and that 30 years of modern research are confirming was neither exaggeration nor superstition. Turkey tail mushroom has become one of the most studied medicinal mushrooms in modern immunology, but it has been used in traditional Chinese and Japanese medicine for centuries, specifically for immune support and what ancient practitioners called tonifying the defensive energy. Here's what makes turkey tail extraordinary. It contains two specific polysaccharides called PSK and PSP that are so potent as immune modulators that PSK is an approved cancer therapy in Japan, used to support immune function during and after conventional cancer treatment. Multiple peer-reviewed clinical trials confirm that turkey tail mushroom supplementation increases natural killer cell activity, improves T-cell function, enhances gut microbiome diversity in ways that directly support systemic immune readiness, and reduces the immunosuppressive effects of chronic stress. The gut microbiome connection is particularly important. 70% of the immune system is housed in the gut. Turkey tail polysaccharides specifically feed the beneficial bacteria that produce short-chain fatty acids, the compounds that directly regulate immune cell production and activation. Traditional preparation was turkey tail tea, made from the dried mushrooms simmered in water. It has a mild, slightly earthy taste. Ancient Japanese practitioners drank it daily as a preventive tonic. Turkey tail got overlooked in Western supplement culture because it doesn't cause a dramatic immediate effect. Its work is slow, deep, and systemic. In a culture that expects to feel something working immediately, quiet immune optimization doesn't sell. Think of it as the mushroom doing the slow, invisible work of keeping you healthy, so you never notice what it's preventing. Thyme is in almost every kitchen on Earth, and almost no one remembers that it was one of the primary respiratory immune plants of ancient Greece, Rome, and medieval Europe. Roman soldiers bathed in thyme water before battle, believing it gave them courage and strength. Medieval European herbalists prescribed it specifically for chest infections, throat illness, and what they called weakness of the vital spirits. The modern chemistry explains why. Thyme contains thymol and carvacrol at concentrations that have been shown to inhibit bacterial and viral growth in the respiratory tract, to reduce the mucus production that makes respiratory infections so debilitating, and to directly stimulate immune cell activity in the bronchial tissue. But thyme's most important immune function is as an expectorant and mucociliary activator. The tiny hair-like cilia lining your respiratory tract are the immune system's physical cleaning mechanism. They sweep pathogens and debris out of the airways before they can establish infection. Thymol directly stimulates cilia activity, keeping that physical barrier functioning at full capacity. Traditional preparation was thyme tea, a strong infusion of fresh or dried thyme, drunk at the first sign of respiratory vulnerability and regularly throughout winter. Thyme got forgotten as medicine for the same reason sage did. It became too familiar as food. But the Greek soldiers who bathed in it before battle understood something that modern kitchens have completely lost. Think of it as the herb that ancient warriors put their faith in, and that modern respiratory research confirms was entirely justified. Moringa appeared in our previous videos for blood sugar and collagen, but its immune function deserves its own spotlight. Moringa leaves contain isothiocyanates, quercetin, and chlorogenic acid, compounds that together create one of the most comprehensive immune-supporting nutritional profiles of any plant ever studied. Think of it as the sweet root that 4 of the world's greatest civilizations independently discovered, and that modern research confirms they were all right about. Black seed, Nigella sativa, has been used medicinally for over 3,000 years. It was found in the tomb of Tutankhamun. The Prophet Muhammad described it as a cure for everything except death, and modern pharmacology has been studying it intensively for the past 30 years. The primary active compound is thymoquinone, and its immune effects are some of the most comprehensively documented of any plant compound in current research. Clinical studies show thymoquinone increases natural killer cell activity, enhances T lymphocyte proliferation, improves antibody production, and reduces inflammatory cytokines that cause tissue damage during infections. A randomized controlled trial showed black seed supplementation significantly improved immune cell counts and function in healthy adults over a 12-week period. But here's what makes black seed uniquely valuable as a preventive immune plant. Thymoquinone has been shown to specifically protect the respiratory epithelium, the cellular lining of the lungs and airways, from oxidative damage. This is the exact tissue that becomes vulnerable during respiratory infections. Traditional preparation was black seed oil taken daily by the teaspoon, or the whole seeds ground and mixed with honey. Both forms contain the active compounds. Black seed got overlooked in Western medicine despite an overwhelming body of evidence simply because it comes from the Islamic medical tradition, which has been systematically undervalued in Western pharmacological research. Think of it as the seed that was buried with a pharaoh and described as miraculous by a prophet, and that 30 years of modern research are confirming was neither exaggeration nor superstition. Turkey tail mushroom has become one of the most studied medicinal mushrooms in modern immunology, but it has been used in traditional Chinese and Japanese medicine for centuries, specifically for immune support and what ancient practitioners called tonifying the defensive energy. Here's what makes turkey tail extraordinary. It contains 2 specific polysaccharides called PSK and PSP that are so potent as immune modulators that PSK is an approved cancer therapy in Japan, used to support immune function during and after conventional cancer treatment. Multiple peer-reviewed clinical trials confirm that turkey tail mushroom supplementation increases natural killer cell activity, improves T-cell function, enhances gut microbiome diversity in ways that directly support systemic immune readiness, and reduces the immunosuppressive effects of chronic stress. The gut microbiome connection is particularly important. 70% of the immune system is housed in the gut. Turkey tail polysaccharides specifically feed the beneficial bacteria that produce short-chain fatty acids, the compounds that directly regulate immune cell production and activation. Traditional preparation was turkey tail tea, made from the dried mushrooms simmered in water. It has a mild, slightly earthy taste. Ancient Japanese practitioners drank it daily as a preventive tonic. Turkey tail got overlooked in Western supplement culture because it doesn't cause a dramatic immediate effect. Its work is slow, deep, and systemic. In a culture that expects to feel something working immediately, quiet immune optimization doesn't sell. Think of it as the mushroom doing the slow, invisible work of keeping you healthy, so you never notice what it's preventing. Thyme is in almost every kitchen on Earth, and almost no one remembers that it was one of the primary respiratory immune plants of ancient Greece, Rome, and medieval Europe. Roman soldiers bathed in thyme water before battle, believing it gave them courage and strength. Medieval European herbalists prescribed it specifically for chest infections, throat illness, and what they called weakness of the vital spirits. The modern chemistry explains why. Thyme contains thymol and carvacrol at concentrations that have been shown to inhibit bacterial and viral growth in the respiratory tract, to reduce the mucus production that makes respiratory infections so debilitating, and to directly stimulate immune cell activity in the bronchial tissue. But thyme's most important immune function is as an expectorant and mucociliary activator. The tiny hair-like cilia lining your respiratory tract are the immune system's physical cleaning mechanism. They sweep pathogens and debris out of the airways before they can establish infection. Thymol directly stimulates cilia activity, keeping that physical barrier functioning at full capacity. Traditional preparation was thyme tea, a strong infusion of fresh or dried thyme, drunk at the first sign of respiratory vulnerability and regularly throughout winter. Thyme got forgotten as medicine for the same reason sage did. It became too familiar as food. But the Greek soldiers who bathed in it before battle understood something that modern kitchens have completely lost. Think of it as the herb that ancient warriors put their faith in, and that modern respiratory research confirms was entirely justified. Moringa appeared in our previous videos for blood sugar and collagen, but its immune function deserves its own spotlight. Moringa leaves contain isothiocyanates, quercetin, and chlorogenic acid, compounds that together create one of the most comprehensive immune-supporting nutritional profiles of any plant ever studied. Isothiocyanates activate NRF2 pathways, the master regulatory system that controls the body's antioxidant and anti-inflammatory defenses. When NRF2 is activated, the body produces its own glutathione, the most powerful internal antioxidant and immune regulator the human body possesses. Quercetin directly inhibits viral replication by blocking the enzyme that viruses use to reproduce inside human cells. This is the same mechanism that several antiviral pharmaceutical drugs attempt to replicate synthetically. Clinical studies show Moringa supplementation significantly increases white blood cell counts, improves natural killer cell activity, and reduces the inflammatory markers that indicate immune system overload. Traditional use was fresh Moringa leaves eaten daily as a vegetable across Africa, India, and Southeast Asia, not as a supplement, as daily food. Moringa got overlooked in Western health culture because it grows only in tropical and subtropical climates. But the populations that have always had access to it have been eating what modern immunology has confirmed is one of the most potent immune foods on Earth. Think of it as the plant that the World Health Organization has been recommending for decades, and that immunologists are only now understanding in full. And here we are at number 17, the one I told you about at the beginning. Echinacea, used by Native American tribes in the central and western United States for over 400 years. specifically for immune defense and infection prevention. More than 30 different tribes documented its use independently. When European settlers arrived and observed these practices, they adopted Echinacea so rapidly that by the late 1800s, it was the best-selling medicinal plant in the United States. And then antibiotics arrived, and Echinacea was labeled a folk remedy. Now the research is reversing that verdict completely. A comprehensive meta-analysis published in a major medical journal, analyzing 58 separate clinical trials, found that Echinacea preparations reduce the incidence of common respiratory infections by 35% in healthy adults. Not just shorter illness, fewer illnesses. The mechanism involves alkylamides that directly activate cannabinoid receptors involved in immune regulation, alongside polysaccharides that stimulate macrophage activity and increase interferon production. But crucially, the effect is prophylactic. It works best when taken regularly before exposure, not just at first symptoms. Traditional preparation was Echinacea root tincture, or tea, taken daily throughout the winter months, the way Native American healers used it, not as emergency treatment, as daily immune preparation. Echinacea got dismissed as folk medicine. The meta-analysis of 58 clinical trials confirmed it was standard medicine all along. Think of it as the plant that 30 different Native American tribes independently identified as essential immune protection, and that modern science needed 58 clinical trials to confirm they were right. Elderflower appeared in our previous videos for fever and collagen, but its immune function is a separate and equally important story. Elderflower, the white blossoms from the same Sambucus nigra tree that gives us elderberry, contains rutin, quercetin, and kaempferol at concentrations that have been shown to directly inhibit respiratory viral replication and stimulate the production of secretory IgA in the mucous membranes. But here's what makes elderflower uniquely valuable as a preventive immune plant. It works on the mucous membrane specifically, and the mucous membrane is where every respiratory pathogen makes first contact with the body. Strengthening secretory IgA levels in the respiratory mucosa is the immune equivalent of reinforcing the wall before the siege begins. Elderflower does exactly that. Traditional use across Northern Europe was elderflower tea drunk regularly throughout spring and autumn, the seasons when respiratory pathogens transition and immune vulnerability peaks. Elderflower got forgotten because elderberry became the commercial success story of the Sambucus family. But traditional European herbalists never used just the berry. They used the whole tree across the seasons. Berry in winter, flower in spring and autumn. Think of it as the forgotten half of the most important immune tree in European herbalism, waiting to be remembered. Ginger appeared in our collagen video, but its immune relevance goes far beyond what we covered there. Ginger contains gingerols and showgales that have been shown to directly inhibit the attachment of respiratory viruses to human cell receptors. This is the very first step of infection. The virus must attach to the cell receptor before it can enter the cell and replicate. Ginger's active compounds block that attachment. Clinical studies show regular ginger consumption significantly reduces the incidence and severity of upper respiratory infections. Research shows ginger tea increases the body temperature of the respiratory tract lining by a fraction of a degree, and that small temperature increase is enough to significantly impair viral replication in the mucous membranes while leaving human cells unaffected. Traditional use in Chinese and Ayurvedic medicine was fresh ginger tea consumed daily as a preventive, year-round. Not occasionally, not at first symptoms, every single day. Ginger got reduced to a kitchen spice and a nausea remedy in the Western world. But the physicians who prescribed it daily for immune protection in China and India for 4,000 years understood something we are only recently confirming. Think of it as the root that has been on every physician's list for 4,000 years, and that modern virology is confirming belongs there. Garlic appeared in our previous video as one of the foods the Israelites mourned in the wilderness. But its immune function in the context of daily prevention deserves its full and undiluted attention. Allicin, the compound created when garlic is crushed or chopped, is one of the most potent natural antimicrobials ever identified. Broad-spectrum antibacterial, antiviral, and antifungal activity confirmed in multiple clinical trials. But allicin's immune function goes beyond direct antimicrobial activity. Clinical research shows regular garlic consumption increases natural killer cell activity, stimulates macrophage function, and enhances T-cell proliferation. A randomized controlled trial showed participants who consumed garlic daily had significantly lower rates of cold and flu infection over a 12-week winter period than those taking placebo. The ancient Egyptians understood this well enough to give garlic rations to the workers building the pyramids. They were managing a massive, immunocompromised workforce. They needed those workers healthy, and they chose garlic. Traditional preparation was raw, fresh garlic consumed daily. Allicin is volatile. It degrades rapidly with heat. The ancient use was always raw. Think of it as the food that built the pyramids, because the people who built the pyramids couldn't afford to get sick. And here we are at number 20, the one I promised at the beginning. The plant used as standard medical practice in one of the world's most sophisticated healthcare systems for 3 decades, that most people in the English-speaking world have never heard of. Andrographis paniculata, not the Andrographis we covered earlier. The pharmaceutical-grade, standardized preparation called Kanjang that has been sold in Swedish pharmacies since the 1990s as a licensed herbal medicine for the prevention and treatment of respiratory tract infections. Sweden has one of the most rigorous pharmaceutical licensing systems in the world. For a plant preparation to receive a product license, it must meet the same evidentiary standards as a pharmaceutical drug. Andrographis met those standards, and it has been meeting them continuously for 30 years. The clinical evidence is extraordinary. Multiple randomized controlled trials confirm Andrographis preparations reduce the incidence of upper respiratory infections, reduce the severity and duration of infection when it occurs, and improve immune function in ways that are measurable, reproducible, and statistically significant. The active compound andrographis works through dual pathways. It directly inhibits viral replication by blocking the NFKB pathway that viruses use to commandeer human cell machinery. And it stimulates interferon production in ways that prime the immune system's antiviral defenses before exposure. Traditional use across India, China, and Southeast Asia was Andrographis tea, intensely bitter, or Andrographis combined with other herbs to make the taste tolerable. The bitterness is not incidental. It is part of the mechanism. Bitter compounds stimulate digestive immunity through the same taste receptors that activate gut immune responses. Andrographis got overlooked in English-speaking health culture because the clinical research was published primarily in Scandinavian and Asian medical literature that never reached mainstream Western consumers. The plant that Swedish pharmacies have been dispensing as licensed medicine for 30 years remained completely unknown to the people who needed it most. Think of it as the plant that passed the most rigorous pharmaceutical licensing test in Europe, and that the English-speaking world still hasn't discovered. 20 plants. Thousands of years of collective wisdom across every civilization that has ever faced winter, disease, and the relentless challenge of staying healthy. and a modern supplement industry that profits from selling you treatments after you get sick, when the ancient world understood that the real medicine was the daily practice that prevented you from getting sick in the first place. These aren't folk remedies. They aren't alternative theories. They are clinically documented plants with reproducible evidence, and in some cases pharmaceutical licensing in advanced healthcare systems. Your immune system is not a lock you open with medicine when it breaks. It is a living defense system that responds to what you feed it every single day. Every plant on this list was understood by ancient physicians as daily nourishment for that system, not emergency treatment, daily practice. So here's what I want you to do. Smash that like button if this video changed the way you think about immune protection. Drop a comment below and tell me which plant surprised you the most. Are you team Echinacea and Elderberry? Team Reishi and Astragalus? Team the licensed medicine that Swedish pharmacies have been selling for 30 years that you'd never heard of until today? I read every single comment, and I love hearing from you. And if you haven't subscribed to Ancient Roots Healing yet, what are you waiting for? Hit that button and ring the bell. We post every week connecting the healing wisdom our ancestors lived by with the science that is finally proving why it worked. Because sometimes the most powerful medicine isn't in a pharmacy. Sometimes it's the practice your ancestors never stopped doing, though we decided we were too modern in need.